You're listening to Radio Sputnik. Telling the untold.
And we are live from America and just outside the Matrix. It is time, once again, for the show that brings you the truth just when you need it. Behind the headlines. I'm investigative journalist Lee Stranahan. This is The Backstory. So it is Carmine Monday. We should have Carmine all up in the hizzy. Carmine, are you there?
I am here, and you forgot to introduce me as sexy journalist, Carmine Sabia.
Sexy journalist with high standards. Here's one of the things I like about Carmine. I was talking to my girlfriend about this over lunch. Is Carmine Sabia rhymes with labia, correct?
Yes.
Now, do you know how I know that, Carmine?
How's that?
From some biography of yours. You were saying it in a biography. Remember that? I wouldn't. That never would have occurred to me. But what I felt like was, here's a guy who owns his name, right? That's called owning your name.
Absolutely.
Right, there we go.
You do it before somebody else do it.
Right, that's what I felt like. I felt like, here's a guy who's not ashamed, because there's no shame in that.
Of course not.
Nothing wrong with that. And now we got a great show today, by the way, Carmine. Andrew Arthur from the Center for Immigration Studies will be on.
Okay.
Andrew Arthur, we got to stop all this labia foolishness. Can't be doing that. Because Andrew's a serious guy. He was a judge for many years.
So then I shouldn't, the part where I want to sing, it won't be a stylish marriage, I can't afford a carriage, but you'll be neat upon the seat of a bicycle built for two. I should say that now and not later.
There we go. Well done. Then, in the second hour, the great journalist Daniel Czar will be joining us. We'll be talking about all sorts of stuff, including international relations, but we got a lot to talk about before that, right here on The Backstory. Okay, so Carmine, I don't need to tell you the two things that were in the headlines over the weekend that we got to talk about. Number one is Joe Rogan, right? And there's a lot to talk about, but the Joe Rogan situation kind of exploded over the weekend. The other thing that I want to talk about that I think is a bigger story in terms of impact on everything, although I think there's stuff in the Rogan story that's educational, is what's going up in Canada, in Ottawa, where there's a crackdown. You've seen this, Carmine, right?
Oh, yeah.
And you understand why I'm saying that, to me, is a huge story. And it's not a huge story because the media is covering it. It's a huge story because the media is not covering it.
They're not covering it. I was to say they're not covering it.
Right. And that's why we're going to cover it, because we're rebels, Carmine. And
Are we? Awesome.
We cover this stuff. Okay, Tarif, we see you on the line. We'll get to you in just 1 second.
No, we are rebels with pause, though.
Absolutely. So let's start by talking about Rogan. So I'm going to repeat something I've said. To quote Joe Pesci in Goodfellas, you're starting to crack under pressure. That's a paraphrase.
Yes.
But I'm seeing Joe Rogan starting to lose it. Do you agree with me?
Yes. Yes, it's very depressing.
So to bring up the news in a headline form, a India RE, is she even a one-hit wonder? I don't know. But whatever.
Yes.
India RE, with a period in the middle, because that's edgy. She came out with a video that there's no way she put this together. And that was the biggest celebrity they could get. And it was what I call the N-word mixtape, Carmine.
Yes.
And what they did was they went through what must have been thousands of hours of Joe Rogan podcasts. And every time he'd ever said the N-word, which, as near as I can tell, because here's when they cut it, Carmine, did you notice, even though they cut him saying it was almost exclusively him saying the N-word?
Correct.
Occasionally, other words would sneak through, and it was always he said, or they said, or somebody like that. So he was talking about what someone else had used the N-word. Did you notice that bit?
Yes, exactly. Go on.
I'll tell you what the context was not. It was not Joe Rogan standing on his front lawn saying, "Hey, you N-words, get off my lawn," or "I hate you N-words," right? That was not what he said.
Well, I thought about it. Like, you know, and Raheem actually said this. Sputnik should pull every song that uses that word off of their platform right now. They have about 3 songs left.
Right. No, that's a very good point. And so Rogan, when I say he's cracking under pressure, you know what I'm saying. He came out and he apologized. He had nothing, Joe. Listen to me, Joe. You had nothing to apologize for. Nothing.
That's a big mistake.
Because I don't agree, and I'm not saying, Carmine, some people are saying never apologize. I don't think that's the truth. I think you should apologize if you've done something wrong.
Never. No.
Does that make?
It does make sense. I'll say it like this. Never apologize to the rage mob, ever.
Right, especially on such a BS attack. And this is a BS attack because the proper response should have been, "Hey, I see what you did there. You put together me saying a word, you dropped all the context, and then you edited it over and over and over again. So it's shocking, because it is shocking, the same way as you point out, Carmine, that I guess Raheem Kassam said, that if you did that, a comedian who's a friend of Joe Rogan's, who's a black comedian, said, whoever did those videos, how much would I have to hire you to go through and cut out every time I'm talking about my junk? He didn't say junk. But you get the point.
Who said that?
It was a friend of Joe Rogan's who's a black stand-up. I forget his name. I retweeted it immediately because he makes a good point. Anything, I'll put it like this. If it had been the word murder or kill, so it's just Joe Rogan over and over going, kill.
Oh, by the way, Howard Stern's had that word on his show quite a bit.
That's right. And worse than that, because he used to have a Klan guy.
Yes.
That was, remember the Wake Up White People guy?
Yes.
Who would use a word that rhymed with piglet, but it threw the N-word in there. Remember that?
Yep.
And I'll put it like this. Joe Rogan had nothing to apologize for. It's not that you shouldn't apologize. If you do something wrong, I guess, sure, apologize. But here's what I don't agree with. First off, I don't agree with the premise, and Rogan completely accepted that, is that it's not okay for you and I, Carmine, because we're white, to ever use that word. I don't accept that premise.
I don't agree with that premise either.
That it's not okay. Do you know what's not okay? And I was looking this up. Do you know who Mobb Deep is?
Yeah.
Mobb Deep has a song called Kill You N-Word.
Yeah.
And do you know what the song's about?
You tell.
It's about killing an N-word. That's what it's about. It's someone he's mad at. And what he's talking about in the song is that he's going to murder somebody.
Well, I got to tell you, I'm not a big Mobb Deep fan.
But I'm just saying, that's, that you should apologize. He should apologize for that.
You know what? No, it's his art. I don't think, look, it sucks, but it's his art. You don't apologize for your art. Listen, Let me tell you something. And I'm going to be very careful because I know the FCC won't let us be or let me be me, but I'll be very careful how I word this.
You're a pro.
First of all, I don't like to use the N-word at all, even in context of saying so-and-so said, blah, 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 blah. I don't like it. That's me personally. But no, I don't agree with the premise. I'm with you there. Number two, and I think this is important. We have forgot to tell people in this world a very important phrase, Lee. It's a very important phrase, and it has been lost to time. And that phrase is, go F yourself.
Yeah,
okay?
no, right, yes.
So, hey, man, you should apologize for that. Hey, listen, go F yourself. And because here's the thing. People, I don't know if they were taught this as children. Did you know, Lee, and this is crazy, and I don't want you guys to do this now if you're listening to us, but you can change the channel. You don't have to listen to Joe Rogan. You don't have to listen to Mobb Deep. You don't have to listen to any of these people. You don't have to listen. But we have something called free speech in this country. It's very important. It's a very important thing. It's so important that they put it first in the Constitution. That's how important it is. And so to tell me, yeah, but a private company, but you're trying to put pressure on this private company. And by the way, the people that are saying I'm going to boycott Spotify, they're not listening to Joe Rogan anyway. But I'm going to tell you, Lee, two very important things. And tell me if I'm going too long here and you want to butt in. But there's two very important things. Why are CNN and Msnbc going so hard after Joe Rogan? Well, I'll tell you why. Because CNN's primetime audience is about 0.8 million every night. MSNBC's audience is about 1.5 million every night. Joe Rogan gets 11 million listeners every single day. They do not have the stranglehold on information anymore, and they want to destroy this guy. They're going to find disinformation. Oh, he said the N-word. Oh, he kicked a puppy once when he was 10 years old. Where is the uproar over the black mayor of New York City, a guy I like, by the way? I'm actually kind of a fan of his. But where's the uproar about this guy using the word, can I say, it's another word for saltine. I don't know if I can say it. Literally, said he's the mayor of a city. Yeah, okay.
You definitely say cracker.
Interesting that you could say that, isn't it? But so the mayor of New York City is saying cracker in reference to police officers. That's fine. Nobody cares. It's not even a big story here. And I get New York City TV. It's not even a big story here. So, I mean, but Joe Rogan, come on. Stop it.
Well, let me say this, too. Let me tell you what CNN will. I want to get to Tarif in just 1 second. But part of what it is, CNN is not going after Joe Rogan because he has a viewpoint they don't agree with. I'm going to say this. He doesn't have a view. This is not about him having a viewpoint. What this is about is him allowing people to hear other people's viewpoints. You hear what I'm saying? So in other words, it's not that he thinks something like he's a Republican or he's because I don't think he is, or a Trump supporter, because I don't think he was.
How hard did CNN go after Whoopi Goldberg, bro? How hard did they go after Whoopi Goldberg for what she said about Jewish people?
Which I didn't think was problematic either. I'm very consistent on this.
Me neither, but if you're going to cancel one, cancel the other. My argument is cancel neither.
Right, that's a better argument. And so I want to go to Tarif here only because I'm looking at the time. And you and I can keep going, and we will right after this. 202-521-1320. Tarif, what is on your mind?
Thank you, gentlemen, for taking my call. I have 4 comments. First, I'd like to say free Julian Assange, and also he raised over 14,000 Ethereum, which is $45 million, and the media is not even talking about it. My second comment is dealing with the judge is going to allow documents to be released from Pfizer and FDA. So FDA and Pfizer didn't win the case against the court. The court going to allow the 400 documents released. The price of oil Zero Haze put out an article dealing with the price of oil, dealing with petroleum, dealing with shortages. That we're in the price of barrel of petroleum is like $90-something, right? But they say it's gonna go over 100, and it's gonna go beyond 100 because they got shortage problems, and the speculation is gonna drive it up. So things are gonna get worse in the country. My last comment is, Rumble came out with a letter saying that they're trying to get Joe Rogan to come over, and they gave him 100 million reasons for him to come over.
Is that real?
Odyssey came out. I don't know, but Odyssey came out. I don't know if Odyssey was being real, like Rumble, or Rumble's being real, but Odyssey came out making fun of Rumble or telling the truth. I don't know, saying, you can come over here by us, we'll give you $100 gazillion. So it's like Rogan have a fan base. If he create his own platform, people gonna follow. Because I'm one of the people that's gonna follow him. I'm gonna leave Spotify if he leaves and create his own, get his own servers. Let Lee be the CEO of the servers. And
good start, yes.
Yeah, that's me. That's all I want to say.
No, thanks, Tariq. Great call as usual. And yeah, I saw the thing. I retweeted the thing from Rumble. I don't know if Rumble's, until you cash the check, you never know. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, do they have $100 million?
Could they get it? I think so.
Listen, you get Joe Rogan, you're on the map. That's you're set.
I'll put it like this: if they wanted to charge $10 a month for their service to listen to Rogan's podcast, they'd make $100 million in a month. Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And there we go. But what this is a war on isn't even about Rogan. Because Ann Coulter came out and said that Rogan's not as half as smart or as brave as a guy like Gavin McInnes, and she's not wrong about that.
Doesn't matter.
This is not about Rogan. This is about his audience. In my opinion, they don't want people to have access to alternative ideas.
But Lee, let's be honest, and this is the argument I have all the time. If you don't have free speech on the internet in 2022, then you don't have free speech, and this is why something has to be done. I hate to say it, at the government level, because guess what? If you and I post certain information about vaccines or masks or whatever, right, we're going to get deplatformed on Facebook or Twitter, okay? Information that, by the way, was a conspiracy theory 5 months ago and is now fact.
Let me ask you this, though, Carmine. A, do you think the government, there's any possibility the Biden administration, the Trump administration didn't step up and do anything about this. So there's no way the Biden administration will. I'll tell you where I think it needs to come from. Someone should have sued. He should have hired Harmeet Dillon or somebody and sued India RE for defamation. You follow me?
Yeah.
You calling someone a racist, and you're doing it with out of context quotes that weren't even quotes. They were quotelets. They were words.
Here's the problem. I think Joe Rogan may be the line in the sand of cancel culture. This may be the actual cancel culture war. Eventually, I think, as one of my friends was saying today, it's got to swing back in the other direction. Well, because I think you're at a point where you got people like Bill Maher, President Obama. I listened to President Obama give a speech. I'm like, this is insane. This is insane. Somebody said something one time 10 years ago. Kevin Hart said some jokes you didn't like 20 years ago. Now he can't host the Oscars. Stupid. And then when Kevin Hart apologized, I was furious. What do you apologize? Eddie Murphy apologized for Raw and Delirious and things. He said, why? What? You think Richard Pryor would have apologized? You know what Richard Pryor would have said? My favorite phrase, go F yourself.
And you can't even say the names. You know, there's a book. Do you know who Randall Kennedy is? You ever heard of him, Carmine?
No, I have not.
Randall Kennedy was a professor at Harvard, a black professor at Harvard. And he wrote a book about the N-word. Do you know what it's called?
No.
I can't even say it. It's called the N-word. If anyone looks it up, look up Randall Kennedy. Randall with all A's in the name. Randall Kennedy like JFK. Randall Kennedy, the N-word. Look that up on Amazon, anybody.
Now I'm
Randall
very
Kennedy
uncomfortable with the word. I am very uncomfortable with the word.
Well, but here's the thing, and this is what Rogan was saying. The word's weird. Elbert Guillory, we've had on this show a number of times. It's one of those words that's strange. I don't know how else to put it. It could be an insult, but also can be a term of affection. And the way some people use it,
it's like the F word.
It's almost just like an adjective.
Yeah, sure.
And I think what Rogan was doing was what Randall Kennedy did in this book, which is just talked about the word. A lot of people were making fun of Yoko Ono. She had a song called Women Are the N-Word of the World, except she didn't say N-word because this is the 70s.
Well, in fairness, Yoko Ono had a song.
Yes.
I think song's a generous word for what she does.
Walking on Thin Ice is a very good song, by the way. Look it up.
You listen to Yoko Ono?
Listen to Walking on Thin Ice. It's a very good song. Also, Yoko, I'll defend Yoko all day because the coolest guy in the world, John Lennon, was in love with her. And knowing a bit about her, like I say, she was so happy when this movie Get Back from the Beatles came out. She literally came out on social media and said, see, I didn't break up the Beatles. Because it shows that she didn't break up the Beatles. That was Yoko hate. But anyway, my point is, it is a weird word. And I think what Rogan was talking about was the fact that it's a weird word.
Well, explain why it's a weird word. It's also a weird word, he said, because one group of people can say it with impunity and another group of people can't say it at all.
Right. That's exactly right.
There used to be a time where with the A on it, well, a white person can say that because I could tell you, God, am I going on record with this? Yeah. When I was a kid, 18 years old and stuff, my friends would, I was in Newark, New Jersey, right? That's where I'm from. So, and, they would call me this word, my N word, what's up? And I still have friends that do that today. And I'd never say it back because in my house, you're taught this is a very bad word. You don't say this word. So I wouldn't say it back. And they got hella insulted that I wouldn't say it. And they got mad at me to the point where I had to say it back, right? For this is like a year of my life, and then they realized, all right, you're not comfortable with it. All right, fine. But they were insulted at first for quite a while that I wouldn't call them that back. And I had to explain, and then I did a few times because they, all right, yeah, cool. You're 18 and you want them to accept you, right? And then I actually had to explain at some point, look, I'm just not comfortable saying this. And, they were cool with it. But.
Well, there's another word that's close to it. It rhymes with that one, but starts with a W.
Yeah, you can't say that now either.
It describes somebody who's white, who's sort of acting black. In an exaggerated way, right? That's what it describes.
But see,
we can't say that either?
You can't, no. But I also reject acting black and acting white. I reject that. You're going to say to me that all black people act this certain way and all white people act this certain way. And I reject that out of hand.
All Italian people talk like Chico Marx and the Marx Brothers, correct?
We all talk like this, yo. You know what I'm saying? I was going to get my mail. I said to the guy, yo, get out of my way. Trying to get my mail over here. What are you doing? We all talk like that all day long.
Now, can I say the part of a gun you pull the trigger? Can I say that?
You can say trigger.
I'm just checking. I can say trigger, okay. And if I
You could have your beers served in a jigger.
Okay, right. Okay. And I can if you're doing math and you write down a numeral, it's a figure, right? I can say that.
Yeah.
So but if I throw a W in there, see, I don't even understand. So in other words, you can't make fun of white people because it is a term that's kind of making fun of.
Because with the N-word, unlike with the W on it, right? With the N-word, you're talking about, I understand, because there's a history of this word being used in a horrible way. There's a lot of weight that comes in it. It's the difference between why you have no issue with somebody doing whiteface, but there's a huge issue with somebody doing blackface because there's a history of things that happened and oppression and treating people less than human that happened with these things that I think that does make them not okay. You know, maybe I bought into the hype. I don't know, but I believe they're not okay for white people to do blackface or for
the problem. I don't like the phrase.
Hey,
I don't like the phrase N-word because it's clumsy to say. So what if I make up a new term like nerd, sort of like nerd, but with a W in the middle, nerd.
Or we could just call it. We should call it Boppa da Boopy. We'll just put that in there instead.
But see, that's not easy to say either. I want something concise.
Boppa da Boopy? I like Boppa da Boopy.
No, because here's the question I have. Words are symbols. So if that's this, I've mentioned this before, because of the FCC, the aforementioned FCC, you and I could say poop, but I can't say another one-syllable word that means poop, starts with an S, ends with a T. I can't say that, right?
Correct.
But that's stupid because the symbol means exactly the same thing. So doesn't the N-word mean exactly the same thing as the N-word?
I guess.
If you were to, I'll put it like this. If there were some kids who were black and they were walking across my lawn and I yelled, "Hey, you N-words, get off my lawn." Is that any, you N-words? See, is it, what I'm saying is the word
you'd
itself.
still be in trouble. You'd still be in trouble for that.
And I should be, because I'm saying the N-word in a way that's unnecessary. I can just, you kids, get off my lawn. That's valid, right? I can tell kids to get off my lawn.
There's a lot of things you can't say, by the way. There's a lot of things.
Carmine? You know what I love then they do? Have you ever seen them when they try to bleep out someone flipping someone off with the middle finger, and they like...
Oh, that's hilarious. Yeah, WWE does this now. It's hilarious.
Where they, if someone's flipping somebody off and flipping someone the bird, they try to like blur out, or they use the pixelization. But you know
hilarious.
What? When you're flipping, I'll put it like this. It's like pixelating out an erect wiener. You're not fooling anybody because it's a rectangle with a pixelated shape. Does that make sense?
Correct, yeah.
Everyone knows exactly what's going on when that happens.
Well,
so you're not fooling anybody.
But there's a series of other words, Lee, that you can't say. For instance.
Like what?
I could say I went to the zoo, and my favorite exhibit at the zoo is the monkeys or the apes or the gorillas, right? But if I'm describing any group of people with those words, right? Can't say that. And you shouldn't be able to say that. I mean, I don't know if you shouldn't be able to say it. You should be in trouble for saying it. You should be ostracized for saying it.
Well, let me do this because we got Brave on the line. Brave, what up, my friend from Atlanta? There we go. Hey, Brave.
So I don't know. I don't want to say the word and get you guys in trouble. The W word, that's not the N word, but sounds very close, right?
Yeah.
Me, I think that's an insult because what you're saying is, not you obviously, but in general, what you're saying is that this white person is acting like an N word, meaning that the behavior that black people have is attributed to being an N-word. You see what I'm saying? Which I know that...
that was my argument. That's my argument. Correct.
Right, exactly, right. So...
Chris Rock, I thought, settled this argument a long time ago. Which, are you saying that there is no such thing as that? I'm not saying...
What?
That there's acting a certain way. If a white guy comes up to you and he's got his pants down...
I dressed like that when I was a teenager. I dressed with my pants sagged and my hat backwards. I come from the city.
We need the photos.
I'll ask my ex-girlfriend for them. She has them.
But Brave, What do you think of what they did to? What do you think of? Were you offended that Rogan had ever said it, or what did you think about this?
I called in the fault lines about this earlier. Like, that's just the woke squad. Actually, in my opinion, it's just the gatekeepers being dialed up by the pharmaceutical companies, Pfizer specifically, Rogan out because of the free platform that he has and the conversations that he has and the
truth
and the conversations that they're having they can't control. That's what it really comes down to, in my opinion, because they've been trying to get to Rogan for a minute because he has a vast audience and no one wants to watch CNN and all of this crap anymore. But you really see they're being activated, and it's an act of desperation because they're swinging from whatever topic they can to try and get him. But we're all intelligent people. We're intelligent people, right? At minimum, we have some sense of common sense and energy firing off in our brain, right? So I think most people can deduce for themselves whether something hurts them or offends them, and then in kind turn off whatever the material is that they don't like, because you haven't listened to every single thing in the world.
Thank you.
Sticking out of your head, and something mysterious in some fantasy world in a multiverse, and someone says something, you just get offended and then you die because you're hurt. That's not realistic.
Hey, let me ask you a question.
we got to go because it's the bottom of the hour, but great call, as always. Wait, what did you say, Carmine?
I had a question for him, but next time.
Yeah, and Brave, if you want to, feel free to call at the top of the hour if you want to. If it fits into your schedule. If you can't do it, that's fine. But we always love having Brave on the show. And coming up right after this, Andrew Arthur will be joining us from the Center for Immigration Studies. We could be talking about the M word there, Carmine, the country that's below us.
Uh-oh.
Are you allowed to say Mexicans? I think we are.
I think we are. Oh, I thought you meant Walla Walla.
No. No, but we got lots of stuff to talk to Andrew Arthur about right after this on the best damn radio show in the world. It's the effing backstory. See what I did?
Want to talk? Get in touch with us at radio@sputniknews.com.
So, Sean, what do you want to talk about today?
Well, Bob, that's easy. I want to talk about the need to stop the development of self-driving cars.
Again, Sean, you're driving me nuts. I think the self-driving car thing's already out of the gate.
No. It's never too late. See, now the leading experts in the field, just pick one, whichever one, leading experts have repeatedly warned us about the dangers of artificial intelligence. Look, I'm telling you, man, we have to stop the robots by any means necessary.
I see what you did there.
Yep.
Tune into our show By Any Means Necessary daily from 2 to 4 p.m. Eastern Time on Radio Sputnik. And don't forget to call in at 3:20 p.m. to our studio number 202-521-1320.
And if you miss us live, check us out on SputnikNews.com, Spreaker, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts to stay up to date on the latest political, social, and economic movements shaping the world around us.
Feeling kind of blue, but maybe also kind of red, and kind of purple, and kind of alone? You've got a friend on Radio Sputnik. Tune into Political Misfits from 12 to 2 Eastern Time, Monday through Friday, for news, politics, and culture without the two-party bias. Catch us daily on 105.5 in Washington, D.C., or 102.9 or 104.7 in Kansas City. Or find us on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you get your news.
Are you bored? Are you lonely? Do you need a hug? Well, we can't give you that, but we can keep you up to date on Radio Sputnik.
Okay, sounds good. Let me know. And we are back, 105.5 FM, AM 1390. in Washington, D.C. It is Carmine Monday. So, Carmine, I'm not shocked that I was at the doctor today just getting a routine checkup, and things seem okay. But I was at the doctor today, and I was talking to Rod on the phone while I was at the doctor, and the nurse overheard, and she said, "Oh, you'll have a lot to talk about with that Rogan thing." The nurse had no idea what I was talking about, but she knew that the Rogan thing, I would say, in a lot of ways, owned the weekend in terms of people, right?
And it's not over. It's not over. I saw Don Lemon trot somebody out there last night or Friday night to basically say Rogan's a racist and you got to get him off the end. It's hey Rogan, stop taking the information away from us. This is basically what it is, and this is why Rogan had to apologize. Rogan, if you won't say what we tell you to say, then we're going to destroy you.
Yeah. And if you let people, a friend of mine made a very good point, that this is really a war on people's ability to think. They want it so you can't think straight. Because, and we'll find out if we get Andrew, and we're trying to get Andrew Arthur. Okay, so I'm going to throw Andrew Arthur for a loop here slightly. He's an expert on the subject of immigration with the Center for Immigration Studies. Hey, Andrew, how you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing greatly. Thank you for having me.
Good. Now here's how I'm going to throw a loop at you. I want to talk to you about what's going on up in Ottawa, Canada, which is not an immigration issue.
Before you do that, I want to just point out, I never noticed this before, Lee, but your name is like something that can be added to the end of a word. What do they call that again? Like he said,
an adverb.
That's an adverb. I'm doing greatly.
Yes. Yes, that's true. That is true. It's
splendidly.
confusing sometimes.
Okay, good.
That's
I'm
right.
sorry. I just point that out. So you're an adverb. Go ahead.
So up now, Andrew, you just because you're an expert on immigration, we're an immigration judge for many years. You don't live under a rock. You've heard about what's going on up in Canada with the truckers' convoy, of course, right? You heard about it at least.
Yeah, no, I'm familiar with what's going on up there.
Now, here's what I want to ask you about, though. It's not even specifically about that. Let's get the tape of the Mountie ready. We had because you were a judge, I'd like to get your opinion on how much authority police have to not obey orders. And this guy we're about to hear from spoke directly to this. This is a guy, as you'll hear, he was doing security for Justin Trudeau. And he announced his resignation. And he makes, I think, a very articulate, coherent case, but that doesn't mean it's right. Articulate, coherent cases can trick you sometimes because they can sound good, but you might listen to this and go, no. You've got to obey. If you're a cop, you've got to obey orders. But we have that clip ready? Okay. So let's hear. I want you to take a listen to what this Mountie said and see, as a judge, as a person who knows the law and is a sober individual, Andrew Arthur, see what you think about what this guy's saying. I'm very curious about this, even though it's not in your area of specific expertise. Let's play the clip, please.
She held to be her ethics. I'm about to lose mine, and my primary responsibility for the last 8 years was supporting protection of our Prime Minister. The irony is not lost on me, and probably not lost on him either. And as a Mountie, I always felt it was very important that I know what my legal authorities are, and that police officers should know exactly what authority they have to do what they do. So I've spent a fair amount of time researching the different legislation surrounding what we're currently dealing with, have subsections that detail how both are subject to the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And I would like to just read the paragraph 3 of the Emergencies Act to you. Whereas the Governor and Council, in taking such special temporary measures would be subject to the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms and the Canadian Bill of Rights, and must have regard to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, particularly with respect to those fundamental rights that are not to be limited or abridged, even in a national emergency. I recently heard former Premier of Newfoundland, Brian Peckford, say very clearly that they have failed to demonstrably justify their infringements on our fundamental freedom. There's many, but I'll hit on the key ones that I think are germane to the current situation. Our mobility rights, where every citizen has the right to enter, remain in, and leave Canada. Our legal rights, everyone has the right to life, liberty, and security of person, and the right not to be deprived thereof, except in accordance with the principles of fundamental justice. Section 8, everyone has the right to be secure against unreasonable search or seizure. That's a big one in the police world. And when I read that, I can't help but think of people who are not even law enforcement demanding your private medical information at the door of a hockey rink. What legal authority do they have to demand that information from you? I certainly never had any training or direction in my law enforcement career that indicated to me that I had the right to demand that from someone. In fact, if I wanted to get medical...
Okay, so there you go, Andrew. And you see what I'm saying? I think he makes a good, compelling rhetorical case, but I don't know if it's a bunch of hooey legally. So you're not a Canadian, you're not a Canadian lawyer or whatever. I don't know if they're barristers or lawyers up there. I have no idea because they're kind of English. But what did you think about what he said? And is any points as a judge, as a person who knows the law, jump out at you when you heard that, Andrew Arthur?
Well, of course, Lee, the most important thing for any law enforcement officer is that they comport themselves in accordance with the law, in accordance with their own conscience. Now, of course, they can look at what they're required to do, and if they determine that that transgresses the law, then they have a variety of choices, and one of them is to quit. If they've received a direct order to do something and they have a chain of command that they can run that up, and the Mounties are a very, very good law enforcement agency, then he should have raised that through the chain of command. The important thing to note here, Lee, and this really does touch, I think, on the fundamental issue that you're talking about, Canada and the United States are very much alike, but very much different too. The United States, of course, has a Bill of Rights that goes back to 1789, and it's rather fulsomely developed. Canada, unfortunately, their Bill of Rights, such that they have, is a bit more novel, and the interpretations of that are a bit different. And the certain rights, and again, thank you for noting the fact that I'm not an expert in Canadian law, but there can be significant differences. He definitely presented his case very clearly, the reasons why he did what he did, and of course the Canadians pride themselves on their freedoms, but the degree to which those freedoms are circumscribed under Canadian law, that's not something I can answer. But again, he made a very clear point. But, when you work for a law enforcement agency, you follow their rules unless it violates some other law, in which case you have an obligation, not to do it, but to raise it through proper channels.
The laws are very different. For example, the conversation we had before this, if you say the N-word in Canada, you could be arrested. So there's different laws, different rights.
Yeah, and Mark Stein, who is a Canadian himself, he's a lawful permanent resident of the United States, has actually written extensively about the restrictions that they have under Canadian law on free speech as it relates to how it might offend other people. So yeah, I mean, those are restrictions that we would not accept in the United States that have been litigated both in the courts and politically in Canada. But, it's all the more reason to love the Bill of Rights that we have and to recognize the genius of our founders.
Yeah, and you can see why, like I said, I thought it was a very good case, but I know in rhetoric, and, as people speaking, that just someone presenting something in a clear, logical way you can get away with, you know what I'm saying, Andrew, you can get away with a lot of BS through a good presentation. Not you. You would never do that, of course. But anybody like this guy. And so now let's bring us back to the area that, of course, you're an expert on through your work with Center for Immigration Studies and as an immigration judge for many years. Now I'm seeing people in regards to, this is a common argument I'm hearing from people, and I'm sure you are too. They're talking about foreign policy and the Biden administration talking about Ukraine a lot. And they're saying, hey, why are you talking about the Ukrainian border when you can't even secure our border? I'm sure you've heard that argument. Now,
absolutely.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that's a good, I think there are better foreign policy arguments, but the Biden administration clearly has a problem. Is it safe to say they've got an almost insurmountable problem with what's going on at the border, at the southern border in particular? Andrew?
Well, to say that it's insurmountable means that it can't be overcome. And as the Trump administration showed, particularly after May 2019, the United States government does have the ability, through proper policies and enforcement of the law, to gain control of the southwest border. Border Patrol Chief Rodney Scott, the last Border Patrol chief, he retired in February, talked about it being the most secure border that possibly in history. And, you know, he and I served about the same amount of time in the field of immigration, he exclusively with Border Patrol. But yeah, I mean, it's the border's in the shape that it's in because of the policies, because of the fact that the administration is not enforcing the laws at the southwest border. And people talk about, you know, the law is broken, needs to be fixed. Honestly, Lee, I don't think there's a whole lot in the law that's broken. It's just not being enforced. And it's not, you know, the exclusive province of this administration. That, you know, it's happened in previous administrations too, at points during the George W. Bush administration, during the Barack Obama administration, certainly. And there were times during the Trump administration that Donald Trump had trouble getting control of the border too. That's why he implemented many of the policies that the Biden administration just scrapped. The only one that they've really kept is Title 42, and that's not even a border policy. That's a public health order.
Now, Andrew, let me ask you something, a weird question, then I'll throw it over to Carmine, throw it right over to you after this. But I've made jokes, and it's a common joke, I'm sure, about the northern border. We're just talking about Canada. In fact, Andrew, is there a problem at all at the northern border? Are people illegally coming across the border from Canada? It might not even be Canadians. It could be other people. But is there any border problem at all at the northern border, or is that just a punchline for an easy joke?
No, actually, in fact, a couple of weeks ago, there was a horrible story. Agents or police officers, I can't remember which it was, but I think it was agents up on the northern border encountered two people walking along a snowy highway. It turned out that they, in fact, were aliens who had entered the United States illegally, and it indicated that there were other people who had been with them who had been abandoned by a smuggler. The authorities later found three, I believe they were Indian nationals, who were dead in a snowdrift up along the southwest border. So there are problems with illegal immigration across the southwest border. But here's really the difference, and this does touch on Canada itself. By the way, the RCMP, the Mounties, are the Border Patrol in Canada, amongst many other duties that they have. But it's very difficult to get into Canada. Air Canada is the main airline into Canada, and they're the Canadian flag carrier. So if you want to fly into Canada, you have to show proper documents to get in. If you can't show those proper documents, you can't get on the airplane to take you to Canada to begin with. Two, we don't have many people enter Canada illegally from the United States. We did have an issue, I believe it was in Edmonton a couple of years ago, in which an individual drove through a crowd of people after a football game. And it turned out that he had entered the United States illegally, made an asylum claim, it was denied, and he I believe he was Sri Lankan, went on up to Canada and carried out that act. And I think there might have been an ISIS flag involved in the whole thing. But, by and large, Canada doesn't have a big illegal immigration problem because it's very difficult to get into Canada. The 1,954-mile southwest border, on the other hand, is pretty easily crossed. There are walls in about 760 miles of it, I think. But by and large, you can walk back and forth across the southern border very easily. There are no impediments other than the Rio Grande where it exists and some mountains and things like that. So yeah, Canada doesn't have as big a problem as we do. Now, there are people in Canada who want to enter the United States illegally. Canada's actually toughened up its visa laws. But, up until recently, you could enter Canada without a visa from Mexico. And if you wanted to enter the United States illegally, it was a whole lot easier to do it that way than it was to come across that southwest border.
There you go. Carmine?
Oh, I'm sorry. I accidentally hit mute. I apologize.
That's okay.
Years ago, there was a Canadian immigration problem. I know a lot of Italians, a lot of my people would sneak into the United States through Canada.
Yeah, it's interesting, Carmine, because the biggest thing that prohibits illegal immigrants to Canada from remaining in Canada is actually the public health system in that country. If you don't have a public health card, you can't actually use a hospital in Canada, whereas, of course, if you're in the United States illegally, you can use the emergency room as your primary care physician, and under U.S. law, they have to take you. So, that is a huge delta with respect to Canada. Canada is actually a lot more regulated a country than the United States.
Oh, wait, I have a question there.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody sneaks into Canada illegally, okay? They get shot. They get rushed to the hospital. They don't have a card because they're illegal. They let them die?
No. So the Canadians will actually, for emergent care, and again, I'm not an expert on the Canadian health system, except I can tell you right now, Carmine, that when, I was in Ottawa on official business and I came down with a horrible case of poison ivy, my only choice was to go to a doctor about 50 miles away to have my poison ivy treated. So I went to the local Walgreens and got ointment and took care of it myself. But for most basic health care, again, if you're in the United States and your kid's got the sniffles, you're here illegally, the kid's here illegally, and you go to the local emergency room, they will treat you. In Canada, however, they have a whole lot more questions they're going to ask you, because that healthcare system that you're accessing is not a private facility. It's a public facility run by the Canadian government. They're going to expect to get their money back.
No, wait, I just want to point this out because this is great irony. And, of course, we're comparing two different countries. But in Canada, where the government pays for healthcare, you better be a citizen who paid taxes for that healthcare system. But in America, where private companies run the hospitals, the government's going to force you to use your money and resources to take care of somebody because it's not their money.
It's actually interesting. I'm going to be going to Yuma, Arizona next week, and I was there a couple of years ago. I would cross the border into Mexico, and a lot of Canadians winter, particularly from the provinces, the western provinces over in Arizona. And they go across the border to buy their medication because, again, you get free health care, but you got to pay for your medicines. Now, it is cheaper in the United States to pay for it, but it's a whole lot easier to get it when you're in Mexico, even if you're a Canadian citizen. But I don't want to perturb any of our Canadian listeners, so and it's not a field of my expertise. But yeah, in Canada, if you get health care and you're not a citizen, you haven't paid into the system, they're going to expect to get their money back.
Yeah, no, it is very interesting, Andrew, and I appreciate you filling us in on that, even though, again, it's not your area, but it's people crossing the border from Canada, like I say, it almost is like a punchline and a joke. But I assume the country I've had the most trouble getting into was Canada. I was a speaker at a convention once. This is 30 years ago. And I got up to the Canadian border, and the guy was asking me questions. What are you about to do? I said, well, I'm going to Toronto. Oh, what are you going to? The guy was a very friendly young guy. What are you going to be doing? I'll be speaking over there. And we had a nice, what I thought was a pleasant conversation. Then at the end of it, he said, "Oh, well, you can't come in." I said, "Wait, what?" He said, "You're taking Canadian jobs." And he said what the issue there was that the U.S. and Canada at the time were fighting over if I went into Canada and spoke at a convention, was I taking a job away from a Canadian? And he said that the U.S. had started it, basically. But the country I've had the most trouble getting into, ironically, is Canada.
A former friend of mine went to Canada. She's going to stay a couple of weeks with another friend of mine who lives out there. She gets to the border. They're talking. They search her car. All this. She couldn't get in. Why can't you get in? You have too much luggage. We don't think you're leaving.
Yeah, and I mean, there was one point that I was actually flying to Ottawa on official business. In fact, I was on a Canadian government ticket, and I got sent to secondary inspections at the airport in Ottawa because they had questions about why I was entering the country. So yeah, Canada does a really good job of keeping out, suspected people going to Canada. And, in many ways we could take a lesson, but in many ways, the Canadian government is very serious about protecting jobs for Canadians, much more serious.
I'm surprised with Mr. Woke Trudeau.
Yeah, no, it is one of those things where we, it's a very good point, Carmine, because think about it. If you were, concerned about the jobs and working conditions of the poorest Americans, the first thing that you would do is you would protect that border and keep people out of the United States who are going to be in direct competition with them.
Correct.
But, this whole thing, and when you look at it, talk about Cesar Chavez, Walter Mondale back in the late 60s, Hubert Humphrey, these people were all against illegal immigration because they wanted to protect American jobs and American labor. Those days are over, at least for the time being.
Well, and also it seems to me, I know this is the case for a number of Democrats, if you're going to give people free services, they know that you can't write an infinitely big check. If you're going to give people free health care, for instance, it's got to be limited to citizens. Otherwise, you're never going to be able to pay for it. Isn't that right, Andrew? That's part of the liberal argument for protecting the border?
Yeah, and, Milton Friedman said you can't have a social safety net and open borders. It's impossible because eventually you're going to run out of money. He said it much more eloquently than that. But, yeah, I mean, that really is what it comes down to. If we're going to have a strong welfare state in the United States where we take care of the least advantaged Americans, and by Americans, I mean not just citizens, but also immigrants who are legally here, you have to actually make the border tight. Otherwise, you're just going to run out of money.
Okay, and we're about out of time. Andrew, really appreciate you rolling with the punches on this one. We had, obviously, with what's going on up in Ottawa, Canada's on everyone's mind. At least you didn't get any Joe Rogan questions. Think about that, Andrew.
And for that, I'm grateful. But it's always a pleasure to speak to you, Lee. And Carmine, I look forward to talking to you in the future.
Thank you, man. Great having you.
No. Thanks so much for joining us. And remind people, Center for Immigration Studies is CIS.org, or is it the whole thing spelled out?
CIS.org. You could, and I generally write at least 1 to 2 things a day. So please follow me, follow the center, and we'll give you the straight facts.
Absolutely. Great job. Great appearance. Thanks again, Andrew Arthur. We got more coming up with our co-host for today. It's Carmine Mondays. Carmine Sabia is joining us on the best damn talk show in the world. It's The Backstory.
listening to Radio Sputnik. Telling the untold.
And we are back. It is time for the second hour, the last hour today of the best damn talk show in the world. It is Carmine Monday. We are joined by guest co-host Carmine Sabia. You're listening to The Backstory. You see, Carmine, that's why I always love having Andrew Arthur on the show, because the guy is a font of knowledge, right? And he just seems very fair-minded. You can tell that, can't you, Carmine?
Yeah, he knows what he's talking about. And yes, he's definitely, you can see, he's definitely fair. He tries to call it down the middle. I like that.
Yes.
By the way,
and
guess what the #1 story is on CNN right now?
Joe Rogan in Ottawa?
Nope.
What
it
is
starts? It starts with a U.
Ukraine?
Biden just made another threat to Russia. Just threatened them again.
Yeah, so we'll talk about that. We got Daniel Lazar joining us this hour on The Backstory. Now, it seems to me like even though Biden is saying stuff, that situation, I really did think we were headed towards inevitable war.
Me too.
But I see that the United States is kind of pirouetting away from its position. We also had situations where, like, Emmanuel Macron from France went over to Moscow, and Macron is saying what they're saying in Ukraine as well. We don't think that Russia's about to invade. And you know what's really interesting in this, Carmine? You've seen maps printed like by the Washington Post or whatever,
correct,
showing that Russian troops are surrounding Ukraine, right?
Yeah, correct.
I posted one earlier today, and it was a map clearly showing the Russian troop buildup all around Ukraine.
The map looks very scary too, doesn't it?
Except it is. Here's what was scary, though. The map was originally printed by the Washington Post in 2014. And it looks exactly like their current maps. And back in 2014, they were saying Russia imminently about to invade Ukraine. So they've been predicting this for 8 years now, which tells you it's a bunch of hooey. There's no imminent anything, right? This is why the White House stopped saying that. Go ahead, Carmine.
Russia should start. We have so many bases near the southern border. Russia should start printing maps saying United States about to imminently invade Mexico.
Yes, although that, too bad Andrew Arthur's not on. But let's get to, we got Jen on the phone. We'll get to Jen in one sec. But first, let's go to Owl Killer, 202-521-1320. Hey, Owl Killer, what's on your mind?
Hey, so you're the headline on YouTube, it's coming off talking about how the elites are playing off of this division, and I don't think it could be more fitting. Jim Hoft was on Alex Jones earlier today, and he was talking about some of the new information that had come out about January 6th. And you and I are both in agreement that you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. I think you summed it up beautifully with that. And however, I did not know that Ashley Babbitt was going up asking the police to stop the people breaching and breaking in downstairs. That's a whole different light shed on what went on inside of the Capitol. And Alex brought up something very important where how the left is coming after the right now and trying to throw the book at them. When the right takes power, there's this going back and forth with this. We want to get revenge on the people that on the other side, and at the end of it, we all lose our rights. And I just an ex-head of BlackRock talking about how we are the global debt level he called it an end of times. It's at an end of time level, meaning like the financial system is done. And the only thing that stopped the collapse was COVID, where they were able to paper over for a time period. And he thinks it's because they wanted to get some type of government control set in place just in not COVID itself, but the response is some type of government control in place just for the impending riots and, the amount of basically having us at each other's throats rather than pointing the blame at the elites that are actually to blame for the policies and what we have now. And at the end of the day, when all else fails, they take you to war. And like clockwork, you talk about how in 2014 it's the same map. It doesn't matter because there are people that are thinking already know this. The thing is, the people that are in a position where they're just going to go along with the state no matter what they say. They don't care. It's the same thing when with the Turkey was allegedly attacking the Kurds and it was a Kentucky gun range. They don't care. They're getting the people with the headlines. And I mean, you just said inevitable war. Trust me, talking to people that know what's going on, unless God intervenes, there is going to be a war.
Well, I agree with that. I'm not sure there's going to be a war this week, though. That's what I was saying. But the Biden administration, and I mentioned this last week, too, that this guy who's calling for nuclear war, Senator Roger Wicker, he was in Khodorkovsky's pocket. And I've mentioned this, anyone can do it. If you just go to any search engine and type in Senator Roger Wicker, then Khodorkovsky, Khodorksky, Ovsky, forgive me, Khodorkovsky. Type in that and Roger Wicker. You'll see there's a quote from Wicker on Khodorkovsky's own website. And Khodorkovsky won't rest until Vladimir Putin is replaced in Russia for personal reasons, mostly personal reasons. He wants revenge of the guy who put him in jail, but also there's trillions of dollars at stake in energy assets. So this guy, Roger Wicker, he's praised by a Russian oligarch on the Russian oligarch's Soros-like website. Anyone can look it up, Open Russia Foundation. That's where this is. And yet no one on the Republican side cares about this or points it out. So it's, to me, in the bag that there will be some aggression, but I really thought we were on a collision course for things very quickly. Now I think enough people, Macron and in Ukraine, they're saying, hey, back off. And I think the U.S. is going to back off. Carmine, are you seeing the same thing, or do you think a war next week is what we're in for?
I don't think we're looking at it next week, but I agree with our caller here. And by the way, why are you killing owls? Owls are good. I agree with our caller here. I think war is inevitable. Might be 20 years from now, but I think it's inevitable. I think it's been inevitable since World War II. I think it's just a matter of when, not if. I mean, I also see that, I don't think they're going to look for any excuse now. And I think, I'll tell you the truth, Lee, I think they jumped the shark with the false flag crisis actors skit. I think that's when people are hey, wait a second here. Wait, hold on.
No, I agree. And I think the upset you're seeing about stuff, part of it also is with the COVID narrative falling apart. In the eyes of a lot of people are seeing stuff, including what's happening in Canada, and going, this is not about a disease. This seems to be about control and power. And they don't like it. And they're pushing back against it. I think it would be a bad time for them to try to do something like that. And I think they're aware of it. 202-521-1320. Our friend Jen. Jen, what is on your mind?
Hi, guys. How are you?
How you doing, Jen?
So, actually, I was calling up about the other stuff you were talking about regarding the healthcare, but I just want to say one point off of Al Keller. I think we're already like in a war. It's just different war now, and it's a psychological war. And the whole COVID thing is sort of like what they do, before communism takes over, and it's a breakdown of the trust in the system by the population. And what COVID's done to me, or what I feel like it's done to the American people, is it's broken their trust further in not only the government, but government's, quasi-agencies and government and health agencies, health care, education, and then it's trickling to the economy. It's like every major system in our country. And so people are feeling more hopeless. It's almost, to me, like it was just a warfare of the mind. So I feel like we're already in sort of a war from that perspective. But
no, I agree with that completely. That's kind of the point that I was trying to make earlier, is that with everything else going on in the world right now, even the Joe Rogan thing, which one thing I'll say about it is I think the race narrative is such obvious BS that a lot of people are looking at it going, what is this really about? It almost seems like it's beyond being about Rogan. Do you guys agree with me on that?
Just get Rogan. Stop anybody else from talking.
There's actually a huge breakdown between what they call foundational Black Americans and African Americans right now that happens almost every night on Twitter sphere. If you jump on, you can hear it, where they're now trying to divide African descent, like African immigrants in our country, against African Americans. And so now they're trying to even divide it further. So it's the insanity never stops in terms of, and that's what happens in the communism type, spaces. But anyway, the reason I was calling is it's kind of interesting in terms of emergency rooms. And, you might be familiar with, there's an act they passed quite a while ago called the EMTALA Act, and it's an emergency medicine treatment act, which basically means that if you go to an emergency room because you're having a medical emergency, you cannot be turned away. And I don't care if you had a stub toe or you have a splinter in your finger. And I know this for a fact because I've worked in an emergency room, and I've had people take an ambulance 3 blocks because they stubbed their toe. And we cannot turn them away, period. It's a federal law that states this, and you'll get in trouble. And this is one of the reasons why people who don't have insurance, who are underinsured or immigrants, go there, and it overwhelms the medical system, and it's absolute insanity. And so they don't go to a primary care office because they'll get turned away there, but they cannot get turned away at an emergency room. And so it overwhelms the system. And Michelle Obama, actually pre-presidency of the Obama administration, she tried to pull something in Chicago where they diverted those people to lower income hospitals. There's a huge scandal, and she got in trouble. Nobody ever really talks about it. But regardless, EMTALA is what the act is. I don't know who supported the act. It makes me want to go back and look now as to who supported that act and why it came about. But that's the reason why that happens in our country. It's illegal to turn people away. Doesn't matter. If they consider it a medical emergency, then you have to treat them.
Carmine, any comments on what Jen was saying there?
No, I mean, not really. I kind of basically agree.
It's really the reason why I disagree is because you're now allowing someone who comes in with a splinter in their finger that your mama could pull out will walk into the emergency room and wait for an hour and a half. And
no, Jen, I was agreeing with you.
Oh, okay. No, I just didn't. Yeah, I mean, listen, I think people deserve health care, and I think I don't think the government should be involved, though, honestly. I just feel like everything the government manages, they completely screw up. So why would health care be any different?
Well, ask the veterans about the VA. Ask the veterans about the VA. The government can't run the VA. They're going to run health care for everybody.
Right. No, it's true. I'm familiar with the VA system, too, because I have friends that work in the VA system. But, I mean, Yeah.
I mean, that's a case in point of the government can't handle it.
Yeah, exactly. So, but anyway, I just kind of wanted to mention MTALA Act because that's why that happens in our country. I don't know about other countries and that sort of thing, but I just thought it was interesting when you guys were bringing that point up. And in Canada, I guess they don't have that act, so they can tell you, you can't come in. Clearly, it sounds like if you're having a heart attack, I think there needs to be more nuance in the law. In other words, if you're having a heart attack, you're not going to turn away. But if you have a splinter, it's like, come on, we're not going to treat this, and they don't allow that in the law. So anyway.
Well, it's also interesting, and it's one of the reasons I love him and Andrew Arthur on. I had no idea that was what he was saying. Basically, was that the healthcare system is one of the things that stops Canada from being overrun with illegal immigrants, and that's very interesting.
Kind of amazing,
if you think
right?
about it.
Kind of amazing.
Yes, but it makes sense.
Right.
It's amazing, but it makes perfect sense and goes right along with what you're saying, Jen. Thanks for the call.
And what Jen's saying, and it does make perfect sense, is we're inviting illegal immigrants here by saying, hey, if you come here, look, naughty, don't come here. But if you come here, here's all the stuff we're going to give you for free.
Correct. And then I worked for a community health center for a while, and it's the same thing. At least, you try to divert them you're supposed to be diverting them from the emergency room by offering them either free or largely discounted health care. But that's a whole other topic for another time, because just like the kids organizations that are supposed to be for kids and are really trafficking children, these CHCs sometimes don't do what they're supposed to do either. So, but that's a different topic, and I don't want to slander.
And Jen, let me just ask you, since you are on the phone, about the thing we spent the first half of the show almost talking about, the Joe Rogan thing, first quarter of the show. We did spend talking about it. Did you notice, and I'll go back to the thing I said at the very beginning, it seems to me like this has been, some people are saying, well, Rogan's not going to be canceled or whatever. I think they did what they wanted to do. I don't think they launched this attack thinking they were going to get Rogan taken off the air, because he is too powerful. But they got him cowed, I think.
Yep.
Which is what I think they wanted. He's apologetic and cowering. What do you say, Jen?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think he's too powerful to cancel. And, they're trying to get him in that defensive position where
they broke him.
His audience is going to lose. Honestly, I didn't know he did that. I haven't been following it closely because it's just such all like the same narrative over and over, and I'm tired. I don't even know what they're saying he said, and I honestly don't even know the story. I'll just be up front. But it's just the same narrative over and over and over again. Every time somebody even slightly apologizes, it makes me lose complete respect for the person.
Yep.
So his audience is going to lose respect for him, just like everybody who loved Bernie lost. He lost tons of supporters when he gave up to Hillary. You lose respect for people when they don't just stand in their ground and say no, like on that. So and
that's why, and that's another reason they hate Trump, because you can't break him. You can't make him apologize. He won't be cowed.
Exactly right. That's right. And I'm one of those people. If I said it and I was wrong, I'm the first one to say, you know what, I apologize. I'm sorry. But if I didn't do anything wrong, and no, I'm not going to do it.
I'm with you, Jen.
If you do that, you lose your integrity. And you're
yeah, and that's why I was saying that I thought the problem with Rogan's apology was that he didn't have anything to apologize for. 202-521-1320. Brave is doing what I asked him. I appreciate him doing it, so let me get to him. Brave's called back. He's on the line. Brave, what's going on?
Hey, what's going on? Just doing a call back for you. Well, I did, if you don't mind. I would like to kind of piggyback or touch on what your conversation you were just having with Jim.
Of course, yeah.
So I would say that I don't know. I was kind of it kind of turned my stomach a little bit initially when Rogan came out and kind of apologized. I guess you want to call it an apology, but I don't think that he's not losing there. And I would hope that listeners, fans, and people who are like Jen and myself and everybody else who are familiar with it and who are rooting for Rogan, I would hope they don't pull out too soon, because while the media and the powers that be might think that they have him in a corner, which if they're smart, which I guess that could be argued, if they're smart, they would realize they don't, obviously, right? But if you I would just point to the Sanjay Gupta interview. So they've been wanting to get on Joe Rogan for a while. Like, they hate him, but they would love to be there with him, right? And so they're pushing him, and they're pushing him to have other viewpoints. We always say, let's not suppress conversation. Everyone says, I think on our side table says, let's not suppress conversation and information. Let's open up the dialogue, right? So that, and if your points are valid, then they'll stand the test of time, and they'll stand. Well, if they now are willing to go on Rogan, right, and say something. Rogan, the cool thing about Rogan is he will call you out for calling him a racist when you come on the show. That was the best thing about the Sanjay Gupta thing. He took it straight to them. So now all these people that have been able to hide in their and talk about who's doing misinformation, if any of them are foolish enough to go on Rogan, they're going to get slaughtered, like UFC style, for the world to see. So it might not be a bad thing. I don't know if he's playing 4D chess. Might be. He might be doing some reverse psychology like my wife does on me all the time. And they know I'm doing some stuff that I didn't even want to do, and now I'm caught up in the middle of it. So I don't know.
Yeah. Before we go to Eric in Florida, any comments on what Brave had to say there? Carmine.
No, not really. Not really. No, not particularly. You?
No, by the way, sometimes it's because we have great callers who make great points.
I just
right?
enjoy listening. Yeah, I just enjoy listening sometimes. There's nothing really to follow up on there.
No, right. I thought you, but when he talks about him going after him UFC style, you might appreciate that. Do you follow UFC at all, by the way, Carmine?
Very, very little, man. Very little. It's not my thing. It's too violent for me, believe it or not.
That's funny.
Hey, man, did you see the...
Hey, Lee.
Yeah, go ahead.
I thought I heard somebody call you.
Oh, yeah, it was me. I wanted to say something real quick. It's funny, this Joe Rogan thing going on. You know who's performing in the halftime for Super Bowl this Sunday? It's Eminem. And if people don't know, Eminem has a racist rap hour mixtape from back in the day. And, he's performing from the world this Sunday.
That is funny.
Oh, by the way, you're a
UFC fan, right, Rod?
Oh, yeah, we had the former UFC middleweight contender, John Fitch, on the last year, if you remember.
I do. Now, how do you think, because I know Rogan does commentary over there. Does he do a good job at that? I have no way of knowing.
Oh, no, he does a great job. He's been a lifelong martial artist like myself, so he does a great job. He knows what he's talking about as far as striking, wrestling, grappling, jiu-jitsu. He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. So, he knows he's an excellent commentator.
Now, because the reason Yeah, go ahead, Carmine.
No, you say first.
No, you go ahead.
Because I'm going to change the subject. Have you guys seen anything about this Amir Locke shooting?
Not really, no. Talk about that.
Yeah, I told Lee about it earlier. I said we haven't. He hasn't really covered, so we haven't not dived deep on it. But yeah, I saw the video and it's gaining steam over there in Minneapolis.
Okay, so what is it? Because I still don't get it. What's going on?
I mean, there's still a lot of questions, but it's another no-knock warrant. Okay, police go in, and they shout police, 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 but it's like 30 seconds. The warrant's not for him. Okay, as far as I know, it wasn't even for anybody in that apartment. It might have been. Was it a wrong apartment? Did we know that? Caller, did we know that?
No, it's me, Rod Carmine. I believe it is the person who was staying there, but that's not the guy. Amir Locke wasn't the name on the warrant.
It was somebody else in the house who actually. Okay, so. Oh, sorry. Well, so essentially, they bust in the house. They shout police, police, police. Okay, and the guy points his legally owned firearm at the police. Police shoot and kill him. Here's the situation. I think it's horrible. It's a horrible thing that happened. I'm gonna go out on a limb. Okay. The search warrant was for murder, by the way. I'm gonna go out on a limb. I'm gonna say that if you're hanging out with a guy who's wanted for murder, you're probably not an innocent flower. I'm going to say that the police had no choice but to shoot him. Whether you say, well, he was startled by the no-knock warrant, he's a legal gun owner, he pulled his gun. I think that a case can be made, and I believe in this, we got to stop no-knock warrants, or at least use them very sparingly.
Well, let me also say, just from what you're saying, this is the case in the case in Kentucky that happened. It was a no-knock warrant, but they knocked. And if they shouted "police, police," that's not acting in a no-knock way. A no-knock way is just going.
Police after they kicked the door in.
Well, do we know that for sure?
Yes, we're watching body cam footage.
Okay. Now, wait. Tell me again, who we got on the line? Okay, so I want to go to Eric from Florida. That's what we're doing.
Okay.
Because we got one more caller, Carmine. Eric from Florida, and we only got a few minutes left. Eric, what's on your mind?
Hey, how you doing? It sounded like you had a healthcare insurance lobbyist on before. I don't know if anybody has seen the satisfaction rates of the VA versus private health insurance, but the VA beats the pants off them every time, hands down. So whatever problems the VA might have, nothing's perfect, but you ask those veterans if they want to go on private insurance and see what they say, if they want to pay for their own. Yeah, right.
Well, people love free stuff, bro. Absolutely. People love free stuff.
Yeah.
That's not the argument.
Because they need health care to live.
And if they can get it for free, I'm sure they love that. And they serve their country, they deserve it. But
every other country in the world gets it for free. What's going on?
But I've known a ton of veterans who tell me they are on private insurance because the VA system is a mess. If they can afford it, they get off. There's a reason people from Canada who are rich come to the United States to get procedures done. There's a reason for that.
To Cuba. There are people in the United States going to Cuba for cancer treatment, okay? There's no good reason for any of this in the richest country in the world, okay? And, 3/4 of the population is already on government health care one way or another, TRICARE, Medicare, Medicaid. Don't get bashful now. Keep it going.
Well, then let's just go full socialist. We'll provide everybody housing and everything, right?
Deal. Okay, let's do it. Deal.
Yeah, and then we'll be Greece in about 5 years and broke.
Ow, I'm going to go broke.
Because it doesn't work.
Where's the money?
You don't have the money doesn't. I know you guys think, let's tax the rich 100%. Take all their money. You're still not going to pay for it all. I'm sorry?
Who said anything about taxing the rich? You don't need to tax the rich to give people more money. Who says that?
Oh, we're going to have doctors work for free? Explain to me how this is going to work. We're not taxing anybody. Because Canada's taxes are astronomical. I ship things to Canada. They got to pay a fee almost the same price of the item they purchase from me just to get the item.
Bring pharmaceuticals to us because we can't negotiate with the private drug makers who we gave the research to make the medicine.
No, I agree with you that. I agree with you on that. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
The fact that we pay more than anybody else for drugs when we're providing the money to research the drugs is absurd.
And we get less for it because we have a class of middlemen standing in the way, operating private death panels, telling people that they don't get to live. And they're money for it. Who needs this?
Correct.
Well,
that's true.
This fierce debate about socialism, this reminds me, we got Daniel Czar on coming up right after this. One of the things I want to talk to him about is China, and in particular, the argument that what I will call the knee-jerk argument that a lot of conservatives use against China, which is basically saying the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, is the whole of their argument. And I've got some questions for Jen. Yeah, go ahead, Carmen.
Bottom line, and this is for the caller, I don't know if he's still on, but I like to make money. Socialism makes everybody equally poor. That's just a fact. It creates a two-class system where there's the very wealthy and then there's the poor. I don't want that system. I don't need that system.
And we'll talk to Daniel Zarkum after this, because I think that's one possibility, but there are others. And we'll talk to Daniel right after this short break on The Backstory.
Stuck in traffic? No problem. Stay informed. Stay tuned to Radio Sputnik on 105.5 FM or 1390 AM in the Washington, D.C. area. Need more? Follow us on Facebook or check us out on SputnikNews.com.
When the going gets tough, the powerful want propaganda, but we won't let them cancel the facts. Whether you're woke or drowsy, we know that you can handle the truth, and we're giving it to you every morning. Fault Lines with Thomas and Stranahan every Monday through Friday from 7 to 10 a.m. Eastern. Your first stop for sanity in a world gone mad.
In a media landscape filled with so-called journalists acting as stenographers for their billionaire bosses, there is a desperate need for news, analysis, and perspectives that buck the status quo and get to the heart of how domestic and international events impact you and me, as well as showing how we can get involved in the struggle to change that status quo. Check out By Any Means Necessary on Radio Sputnik, Monday through Friday from 2 to 4 p.m. Eastern, to hear the stories and voices that mainstream media refuses to tell you. And join us as we connect the political, social, and economic movements shaping the world around us. That's By Any Means Necessary, Monday through Friday at 2 to 4 p.m. Eastern, right here on Radio Sputnik.
Hi, I'm political analyst Garland Nixon.
And I'm political scientist, author, and nationally syndicated columnist Dr. Wilmer Leon.
We're the co-hosts for The Critical Hour, airing Monday through Friday from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern Time here on Radio Sputnik in Washington, D.C.
We close out your day with a thorough and hard-hitting analysis of the day's top stories, where we bring in brilliant scholars, authors, and investigative journalists from around the world.
And on Fridays, it's panel time, when we do a roundup of the week's most important issues.
Join us to keep up with the world's top stories.
Enjoy an in-depth analysis.
And have a little fun along the way. Listen to our show,
The Critical Hour, Monday through Fridays on Radio Sputnik.
We are back, 105.5 FM, AM 1390. It's the show that brings you the facts and the truth behind the headlines. It's The Backstory. I'm Lee Stranahan, joined by Carmine Sabian on Carmine Monday here on The Backstory, and joined online by the great Daniel Lazar, writer, political analyst, man about town. Hey, Daniel, how you doing?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm good. So, you know, one thing, we got into a somewhat heated debate about capitalism versus socialism, but let me ask you from your perspective. Let me say something that I don't think is controversial. The Soviet Union, that fell, and it fell in part because it wasn't doing a good job of taking care of its people. People were poor. And China, at one point, was broke. So, Daniel, as someone on the left, what do you think went wrong in the Soviet Union, or what was wrong when the people were poor in China? Because what we're going to come to is a situation today where I think a lot of conservatives get it wrong. I'll just jump to that point now so you know where I'm headed with it.
Well, you know, I mean, first of all, this is a very big topic to which many of us have devoted a major portion of our lives.
Because I want to say real quick before you answer, because China's not poor now because China went to capitalism. China went to capitalism.
Things. Yeah, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, I don't think that's cleanly true either. I think they've got elements that there's something different than pure capitalism or
pure
communism.
Socialism. Correct. And so is Sweden and all the countries they point to. Those are not pure socialist countries.
Okay.
But Daniel, go ahead. You're right. It is a big topic. Oh, what the hell? That's why I'm bringing it up at the beginning of the half hour. Go ahead.
Okay. So by the 60s, the Soviets were running out of steam. By the late 60s, and when I say running out of steam, they're running out of political steam. I used to get an English language translation of Pravda every day. I was courtesy of my job at the time, and I'd read it. And I never saw in my entire life such leaden prose. I mean, you had to take lessons to learn how to write so badly and so boringly. And if you listen to a speech by Brezhnev, I mean, it would make Joe Biden seem like, a happy-go-lucky, brilliant comedian. I mean, Brezhnev was one of the stupidest, most brain-dead men on earth. And they kept choosing leaders like Brezhnev even after he kicked the bucket. There was a guy named Konstantin Chernenko, who took over in 1983. He lasted exactly 13 months in office. He was so sickly and decrepit, he could barely read the speech at Brezhnev's funeral. He couldn't even climb to the top of the viewing parade. He had to be helped up the stairs by aides, etc. It was a classic gerontocracy. And things started falling apart in a really bad way by the 70s. I mean, the economy, the underground economy was rife. The black market was rife. The country stopped producing high-quality goods. And then all kinds of weird kinds of gangsterism started taking place by the early 80s. And so by the end of the decade, by 89, it was clear the country was heading for collapse, and people inside were desperate. I mean, actually, my sister-in-law, I have a sister-in-law who escaped from Russia in the late 80s, and said that they were so desperate they would have gone anywhere in the third world in order to get out of Russia. So it was a classic downward slide, and it reminds me of certain ways of a certain other country, who was once on top of the world, and is now just sort of has let things go, has let things slide. Social conditions in various areas are getting really scary. Natural disasters are piling up. The economy is not working for the majority of the people, and people are getting really upset as a consequence. And that country in question seems to be unable to pull out of its death spiral. I mean, it keeps electing, leaders who are worse and worse, who are more and more out of touch. Its political class is just completely locked up in itself, has lost touch with the concerns of the broad population, et cetera, et cetera. And I assume you know what country I'm talking about.
Well, no empire lasts forever. I think the fallacy that people believe it'll last forever is wrong.
And also, Daniel, what you're saying, if I can sum it up, is the problem's old people. Is that what you're saying?
Well, old people and who are when they're in charge. I mean, really old people who are decrepit and can't even see straight and have no idea what's going on. Joe Biden, or Brezhnev, or Chernenko, or whatever.
I like to call Joe Biden Mr. Magoo.
Okay, but the parallels are really quite striking. And China, what happened in China was a bit different, but China clearly, opened up the floodgates of the free market, invited in foreign capital, gave them, wide-ranging investment opportunities, and China, and the Chinese economy took off because they sort of invented or opened up this free market sector. But China is not out of the woods yet either. I mean, their real estate, a sector. I mean, is so overblown, it's almost beyond our imagination. I mean, it accounts for what, 29% of the Chinese economy.
You're talking about almost entire towns of empty buildings.
Yeah, and and it's just it's so vast. I mean, it's like 4 times the size of the U.S. real estate sector relative to the economy. And it's completely overpriced, and there's no way to climb down from there. So no one knows what'll happen when that whole thing blows up. But this is what happens when you let the capitalists in the door, right? They bring with them all of capitalism's problems.
Well, and no, because no system's perfect, right? I think we have I think in America there's a good mix of capitalism and socialism. Not all socialism is bad. Here's what I've argued for years. You can't let either system play out to its full end. You can't have socialism and play it out all the way, and you can't have capitalism and play it out all the way. You have to have a mix of systems and safeguards, because neither system will work if it's exclusive, in my opinion. And I think history's proven that. I think if you go full capitalist, greed takes over, and you again wind up with the very rich and the very poor, and that's it, and you end the middle class. I think the same thing happens with socialism.
Well, also, I'll mention, and this will take us into the foreign policy thing, Daniel, excuse me, that if you look at history, at the beginning of the 19th century, the most powerful economy in the world was China. China had the biggest GDP in the early 1800s. I think by 1820, China was the biggest economy in the world, and people forget that history. Yeah. And one of the reasons they had such a successful economy is they hadn't had war for a long time, because war is a big drag on the economy.
Yep.
And so they weren't spending money building up an arsenal. And I think, look, if you look at the end of the Soviet Union, I think they were putting too much of their money into an arsenal. So whether you understand why...
The argument being that Reagan broke the Soviet Union with the arms race.
Yes,
yeah, but
yeah, go ahead, Daniel.
But it was breaking a long time before that. I mean, the signs of strain were growing by the late 60s. I mean, the economy was slowing down. Consumer goods were in short supply. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. May I ask your age?
71.
You were you a hippie?
No, I was an anti-hippie.
Really? See, man, I'm picturing you with the long hair, man. I'm picturing you with the long hair and the flowered shirt.
Well, my hair was a bit longer than it is now, but I was basically a straight-laced youthful Marxist.
Marxist? You were a Marxist. Are you still a Marxist?
Sure.
Okay, I'd love to know why.
Why? Well, first of all, when you say the U.S. is a mixed system, the U.S. is not a mixed system. The U.S. is the purest capitalist society on the face of the earth, and
Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, welfare, food stamps.
That's just like scams run by the rich, and the economy. The economy is in such bad shape, and society is in worse shape. I mean, there's a health crisis, there's an energy crisis, there's a climate crisis, there's an opiate crisis. The list is nearly endless. And and social conditions out in flyover country, where the liberals don't go, are really plunging downwards. It's really outrageous.
You believe Marxism is the answer to that?
Yeah, basically.
Why?
Yes.
Why?
Oh, because all socialism is about is essentially popular sovereignty. But popular sovereignty, not limited to the political sphere in the very narrow sense, like the kind of the fill in the blanks, democracy we have now. But popular sovereignty extended across all of society, into economics, culture, science, etc. I mean, our society.
You're a full communist, then, am I correct? I want to make sure you're a full communist.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm trying to understand.
But not a Soviet-style communist. But
my question to you is, I grew up poor. Okay, I was from Newark, New Jersey. Pretty poor, right? And my mom, she got her real estate license, and she worked real estate. Eventually, we got out of there, and she became an investor. And then I was still poor, like as I got older, because we were just okay, And I wasn't poor, but I was middle class, and then I kind of just made headway in this political sphere and letting my opinions be known, and I climbed my way, and now I make a really good living. And my understanding of, unless you have a different definition for communism, is that's very nice that you worked very hard. Now give me all your money, and we're going to distribute it as people need it. And I think I earned every dollar of my money. It's mine.
Well, I have no idea what you did for a living, so I therefore have no idea whether you earned every dollar that you made. But socialism is not about seizing every last hard-earned dollar, and pissing it down the drain. I mean, socialism is about people taking control of society as a whole and running it for the benefit of the people as a whole, not an increasingly narrow sector of the capitalist class. I'm sorry, go on.
But that predisposes that if the government is going to give to each by his need, okay, that predisposes that people are going to say, well, this is a great system. Let's all go work really hard for it because we're going to take care of each other. When the truth is, as we saw when the $1,200 checks were coming out and the $600 unemployment benefit was coming out, that if you give people enough money, they're going to say, screw you, I'm not going back to work. Thanks for the cash.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you structure these programs wrong, yeah, but under socialism, the people are the boss, and the people, therefore, are in charge of their society, and therefore run society, the whole of society, the way they collectively, democratically think it should be run. So
what happens to the lazy?
Pardon me?
What happens to the lazy people?
Then the all-seeing eye of the people swoops down, corrects them, puts them to work, or cuts their pay or kicks them out in the street. If you don't work, you don't eat. So the all-powerful voice of the people, the all-seeing people, the all-powerful democracy, sees to it that society as a whole is functioning.
And then you're going to trust. You're going to trust the people in charge of the government.
No, I'm not going to trust people in charge. I'm going to trust the people to put those individuals in charge.
We do that now.
And see to it they're doing their job.
We do that now, and they stink.
No, they're not. It isn't now.
Let me just jump
in for
1 second, because
sure, go on.
Because this is something, Daniel, this is something that I hear all the time. By the way, I had no idea you were saying. You've been on the show dozens of times. You always sound great. I'm not saying, but I don't sound great, and I'm 56. So I had no idea you were 71. Let me just, whatever you're doing it right.
Thank you.
But whenever I hear people talk about, a lot of times I hear people who say they're on the left, and they seem to think that work, the concept of work, is only part of capitalism. And what you're saying is what I believe to be true, which is no one says if we have socialism, if we have communism, you're not going to work. That's not part of communism, is you just get to lay around, right, Daniel?
Of course not. I mean, socialism wants to rebuild society, and you can't rebuild society by laying around.
So you're going to argue, though, your argument is I've heard this argument so many times. Socialism, communism work. It's just not been done correctly yet.
Well, that's true, of course. Yes, you're right. But that was true for centuries about political democracy. I mean, political democracy goes back, depending on how you measure it, to the 1580s, the 1640s in England, et cetera, and it repeatedly failed. In fact, after the French Revolution, people were so terrified of the word because they equated political democracy with guillotines that people resolved never to have it again. But now we think of democracy as being relatively old hat. It's a very simple procedure. We think it's normal that everybody has a vote. I mean, 2 centuries ago, that was completely unthinkable.
But I'll say something that's going to be very controversial. I'm going to say something that's very controversial, though. And I think it's the problem with socialism and communism, and it's the problem even with America right now in democracy, is that I'd say a good 70% of your people are complete idiots.
Wow.
They're complete idiots. They shouldn't be voting. They shouldn't be running anything. Go ask them. Ask average people in your family or your friends. Average people, not people that are learned like you or me or that are on top of the issues. Ask average people. Ask them basic questions about what's happening in the news right now. They're clueless. I do it all the time.
First of all, the funny thing about America is that a majority of Americans think that a majority of Americans are stupid, number one. And number two, I would take the wisdom of the person sitting next to me, on the subway at random, over half the members of the White House staff. I mean, I look at a Jake Sullivan or a Tony Blinken, and these guys are so out of it. They have no idea how the world works. And the strap hanger next to me has a more sensible idea of what's going on. I mean, he will, if you ask him or her, they will say, like, what the hell is going on in the Ukraine? Why is a major war breaking out? What does this have to do with making America a better society? Why is America always, looking, running after ridiculous adventures in the far corners of the world when it can't even get its house together at home?
Because you agree that we should make America great again.
Make it great. It's never really been great. It's always been a very problematic society. But nonetheless, we can certainly make it better than it is now. And you don't do that by cavorting with neo-Nazis in Kiev.
Well, and Daniel, let me talk about, because China's all over the news, obviously, because if nothing else, the Olympics. And we're seeing there was this one politician who wanted to run this, calling China a genocide, and it's the stuff about the Uyghurs. And all of that stuff is stuff that was drummed up, by the way, by the CIA and Soros. And people who are Republicans fall for it hook, line, and sinker. And it's weird to me. But I will say this about China. It used to be, one of the ways things have changed, and no one seems to have noticed this, is the rhetoric used to be about China in the 70s, let's say, that they couldn't feed their people, and it was because communism doesn't work that way. Now it seems to me, Daniel, the argument, it's still people talking about the CCP, the Communist Party, is that they're too strong economic competitors. Am I wrong in thinking? Yeah, go ahead, Daniel.
Because they steal.
That was actually a complaint of the Biden and Trump administration, that China's industrial policy was unfair because they were using their government too effectively to bolster the Chinese economy. I mean, it's ludicrous.
Well, they're using slave labor.
They are?
Come on, man. What do those people get paid? Come on, bro.
In China?
Yes.
Chinese wages have risen dramatically. I mean, China has lifted 1 billion people out of poverty over the last 30 years. It's one of the great accomplishments in history.
I guess it depends on what your definition of poverty is.
Well, yes, of course. It's the average. In China, the average person is not as wealthy as they are in the U.S. That's obviously true. But 1 billion people, roughly 1 billion people, have been lifted out of poverty, as defined in China, over the last 30 years. That's an extraordinary
because they let capitalism in, my friend.
Well, can I respond to that?
But yeah, you can, Daniel. But just one second. But Carmine, it seems to me that you're contradicting yourself right there. You just were saying they're not really out of poverty, and now you're saying, well, but the reason they're out of poverty, you got to pick one of those positions.
No.
Have they?
They're not really out of poverty, but the reason they have any kind of rise in wages is because they let capital. Because we're making iPhones there and sneakers there and products I sell are made there, and everything in the world is made in China. Look at the back of any box. It's made in China. It's not made in China because they're making the same wages in America. They're making it made in China because they can pay people pennies on the dollar.
Well, it's not quite as bad as that. And in fact, some manufacturing, believe it or not, is actually fleeing China for poorer parts of the world. It's hard to believe, but it's true. But wages in China have still risen quite dramatically, and hundreds of millions of Chinese have attained something like a comfortable living by Western standards. Some a small number actually are very rich. I mean, China's got hundreds of billionaires, for example.
Correct.
But I was going to say that China a century ago was a broken country. I mean, a broken country, torn by warlords with social conditions, labor conditions that were barely comprehensible by West.
By the way, whatever happens to the guy that runs Alibaba?
If I recall, he's in a bit of trouble with the government. Is that correct?
He got a little too powerful.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, China wants to keep its oligarchs in line. And when we know from the Ukraine what happens when they don't do that. But anyway,
and we
so
also
the
know
point is that,
from here with Jeff Bezos. But keep going, Daniel.
Or Elon Musk. So they had this revolution in 1949, which for the first time in modern Chinese history bound the country together in a single tight unit. And yes, I mean, of course, I mean, Mao was a monster, and many people died, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, I don't want to make light of this at all. But however, the country that emerged out of this process was a powerhouse. Now, this would not have happened, quite simply, if there was no revolution in 1949. And the counterexample, of course, is India, where there's no mass education, no mass medical care, no mass infrastructure even. I mean, so and children in the countryside grow up to be a head shorter than children of the middle class.
Yeah.
So it's a country of vast class differences. And it's that way because the India, for various historical reasons, never had the unification project that China had.
No, and in some cases in China, for instance, George Galloway was just on Twitter talking about the problems he was having in England catching a train. And anybody who's seen the rail system, a publicly funded rail system in China, it's like something out of science fiction.
Yeah.
And seems to be a very efficient, very good system. Now let's take this into contemporary politics in the last minute or so. Fantastic discussion, Daniel. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Let's talk about China and Russia, who clearly have become closer than ever. We could see this. They invite Vladimir Putin over just to fall asleep over the Olympics. China and Russia could not. And by the way, that was some world-class trolling right there on Vladimir Putin's part to fall asleep when Ukraine was being introed. But what do you make of what's going on between China and Russia, Daniel, in the last minute or two?
Well, first of all, okay, very quickly, the U.S. is trying to turn the clock back to the glory days of 89 to 2001, when it was the world hegemon. Whatever it said was law. No one dared contradict the U.S. Russia was in America's pocket. China was in America's pocket, et cetera. The world has changed in the 20 years since then, and the U.S. is trying to turn the clock back. It's not succeeding. The more it tries, the more it pushes Russia and China together, and also, by the way, Iran, together in order to jointly resist American efforts to reassert its hegemony. America is going to lose this battle. Its role relative to the world is shrinking. Its GDP share of global income is shrinking. Its military is grossly overextended, and America will simply lose this battle. And
they can crash the dollar if they keep trying.
Or Russia and China sort of sense that the ground is shifting, that the pendulum is shifting their way, and they are making common cause.
Yeah, and so Daniel, you don't say it's ending well for the United States.
That's a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, and look, these statements that have come out recently from Russia and China, again, they could not be clearer sending a message. And do you think the United States is going to get a clue on this or just drive themselves off the cliff here, Daniel?
No, the latter. I mean, Washington is in a giant bubble. They just have no idea what's going on. I mean, you saw that Ned Price press conference last week with Matt Lee. I mean, Price is just completely out of it. He has no idea how the world works.
Daniel and I agree. To end the show, Daniel and I agree. Daniel, reach out to me on Twitter. I really want to keep talking to you.
Okay, great.
Yeah, Daniel Lazar, thanks so much for joining us. Fantastic conversation.
Bro. He's awesome.
Daniel's great. And it's what we do here on The Backstory. You did a great job, Carmine. Great conversation with you as well. Thanks so much to Andrew, Arthur, and all of our callers, including my Atlanta friend, Brave, Tarif, Eric, everyone else who called in. Thanks. We'll see you tomorrow on Backstory.
listening to Radio Sputnik. Telling the untold.
Good evening. Welcome to the Critical Hour. We are coming to you from the capital of the United States of America, Washington, D.C., here on Radio Sputnik. I'm political scientist, author, and nationally syndicated columnist Dr. Wilmer Leon. I'm joined here by my co-host, political analyst Garland Nixon.
Thank you, Wilmer.
For the next 2 hours, we will explore and analyze the salient news stories that are impacting the global village in which we live. TASS reports Presidents Putin and Macron began talks today at the Kremlin. Vladimir Putin and Emmanuel Macron did not shake hands as they met. All of this while Olaf Scholz comes to Washington. What are the takeaways here? Well, for insight, let's turn to our first guest. He's a Moscow-based international relations and security analyst, Mark Sleboda. As always, Mark, welcome back.
Dr. Leon, Garland, thanks for having me. It's always an honor and a pleasure to be on the Critical Hour.
So, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov expects a rather substantive, long discussion, extensive in terms of time and content. According to him, tensions in Europe due to the situation around Ukraine and security guarantees to Russia will dominate the talks. Peskov stressed that the situation is too difficult to expect a breakthrough during just one meeting. And also on the 15th of February, one more partner in the Normandy 4 dialogue, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, is expected in Moscow. So talk about the coordination of the French and German trips here, both meeting today, one in Moscow, one in Washington. Mark Sleboda.
Yeah, I think there is, good reason, of course, to believe that the two are working in concert to try to, Europe to play the middleman, to try to broker some type of deal between the United States and Russia over what is happening in Ukraine. Ukraine, essentially, from the Russian government point of view, the Kiev regime being simply a U.S. Puppet regime, a client state without any real agency of its own. And over larger Russian security guarantees that it has demanded regarding the eastward expansion of NATO. It is, I think, no surprise that we see right now Germany going to the U.S. The U.S. has been trying to put a great deal of political pressure on Germany lately to hold its line. Define Germany's foreign policy with regards to Russia, including over the last couple of years, the threat of sanctions on Nord Stream 2. And the U.S. Officials from Jake Sullivan on down have been making statements that if there is a Russian intervention in Ukraine, that Nord Stream 2 will not function, will never function, will never